tuned in to Off the Record. Off the Record. Off the Record. Off the Record.
Off the record. What up, y'all? It's your boy DJ Hollywood, and we are here for a special edition of Off the Record podcast where we talk to the people behind the records, but it's on the record, then it's off the record. Like, you get it. Mm-hmm. But listen, man, we are here for a very, very special edition with some very, very special guests in the building today, man. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the great Trumastr and the great Lo-Fi Lobo. Did I say it correct?
Yeah.
Lo-Fi Lobo in the building with the great Trumastr, man. How you fellas doing today?
Doing good.
Really good.
Doing good. We're glad to be here. Happy to hang out with you and get down with some of the wild and crazy media madness that you partake in.
On that note, man, we are here at the Blake Annex, man. So shout out to the Blake Annex for their lovely podcast room that they just launched, man. So if you're interested in getting a podcast up and going, you see it, man. This is the place to be. So shout out to Blake Annex. Yeah, man.
You're digging it. Like, just, yes. The vibe is nice, right?
The vibes is vibing.
It's vibing. Vibe is nice.
I love that.
It has like some slight bouginess going on.
Right. With the little gold framing.
Out of wood.
So now, man, we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of hip hop, man.
Yeah, man.
And
hip hop.
And you guys have experienced a vast amount of it. I'm only 30. So you guys have experienced the evolution of hip hop. So I wanted to bring you guys here today to discuss that and talk about it. And a lot of people, kind of downplay. Well, I mean, they can't at this point, but a lot of people downplay hip hop.
They did or do?
A little bit of both. I feel like hip hop gets its credit now, but I feel like there's still a good amount of people who are also like, I don't listen to hip hop. Then they're like bumping in the radio to work.
Yeah. Man, you can say that about anything, man. You can say that about classical. Talking about music that's been around before, many of these musical art forms and that we listen to now, and it's still around. There's still people going to, the Hollywood Bowl and the Lincoln Center and, doing all that. All of this stuff is going to be around. It's been around, but, hip hop, when something's 50 years old, at that point, people don't really know what it's like for it to not have been here. Whereas I do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
When I grew up, there was no rap. There was disco, funk, jazz. Like, that was the music that was playing, which is why that's the music that I am particularly drawn to now. Like, that's what I want to always play, because I want to get closer to, I feel I'm going full circle. I want to get closer to what I was listening to but not paying attention to as a young person. That's why I'm like heavy when it comes to like doing my parties. Like, most of my music is up tempo. K-Tronada is like my dude, because he's playing the music that really does speak to me. Yeah. And he's also sampling, but he's doing it in a modern way. But he's also sampling a lot of the stuff that my mom would play, that she would go to the discotheque to listen to, bring home on a vinyl record, and play it on a Saturday or whatever, cleaning the house. So that's why that's why artists like that, speak to me. But of course I love hip hop. I watched it rise.
Right. And
Get up out of bed.
It's interesting because I'm with that intro, you made me feel a lot older than I feel like I might really be here. I'm about 10 years younger than this one, and I'm about 10 years older than you, right?
Yeah.
10 years younger than this guy, 10 years older than
And then
you.
we got Phantom in the
And
Cut, who's 10 years younger than me.
so we're
So
bringing it. So we in this room right now. We have the eras.
Right.
A lot of that here. And with each era, each decade, with each kind of iteration of that, there was the people that loved it, that were super into it, and people that denied its existence,
Correct.
people that denied its relevancy.
Correct.
And I feel like it's interesting to be on the somewhere in the middle of these eras between a true school era and a new school era, old school era, and to get my my personal biases of like, all right, well, this is what I consider relevant versus, all right, this one didn't really hit my radar like that, but it's all good and it's all love and it is all bigger than music, obviously, but it's like, you just happen to be here and a part of it.
So August 11th, 1973. The great one, I didn't even know he was Jamaican. I just found that out literally like a couple days ago. But DJ Kool Herc, and I want to make sure I get her sister Nancy launched the first. So how do people credit it? The first hip hop flyer or the first block party? How do people credit that day on August 11th?
The piece of the lore that I understand completely is that right? You mentioned his sister, Clive, his sister, Kool Herc's sister, it was a back to school event, right?
Yes.
What I understand,
Okay.
right? And she put the party together, and her brother was the DJ. But I don't even know. So this is where my understanding then falls short. Do you say, hey, we need a DJ for the party before DJs exist? Like, how did she know? How did they have the conversation?
I need someone running sound.
Right. What was that conversation like? We need, and how did they know?
Well, for sure we need
to bring.
For sure we need music,
Right.
Of course, because
Right.
that's going to entertain the people. So that's
So you were like a month old, right? When this happened? What are your memories of this?
Is there any?
So this comes up a lot with me. I'm not a hip hop historian. Like, I just grew up. It was happening. It's happening all around me.
That's interesting.
Like I'm not that person who has the accounts and who has read all the documentation on hip hop. I simply watched it grow up the same time that I grew up. I was just my hip hop experience is my own. It's very unique,
Right.
and because it only belongs to me. So I remember my father coming home certain days of the week from work, and he reaches into a paper bag and he holds a vinyl record up, and it's Curtis Blow. And everybody I'm playing stickball with is like, yo, your father got the Curtis Blow record. And game over. We run upstairs and we play it over and over and over and over again. Same thing with Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight, pulling these records out. And like, he didn't particularly love the music, but he knew that his kid did,
Right.
just like my grandfather didn't particularly love Sade, but he knew that my father did, because he listened to a different type of music. He listened to a different type of jazz. They frowned upon the Sades and Anita Bakers because they grew up listening to Mingus and Monk and Nancy Wilson. You know what I mean? So it wasn't. My father didn't become a fan of hip hop until Heavy D and Will Smith came out. Like these are my memories. I remember being in a break-in crew. I remember sitting on trains and looking at graffiti and wondering what that meant and why people were upset. Wondering why people were upset about it. Because I like to draw. I used to like to take chalk to the street, and I remember getting in trouble for it. And even as an adult, like I'm like, Dad, it's just chalk. It's gonna wash away. Like
You could paint over it. Yes. Yeah.
it's a big deal because we used to draw. We used to do chalk drawings on the sidewalk, but we had like a landlord in our building that basically freaked out at everything that we did. That's what. But that's that, and this is the story that I want to reiterate, which is hip hop is really about expression for people who don't always get to be heard.
True.
You know what I'm saying? So there were things that I did that were an act of expression that might not have been allowed. Be it drawing in the street or dancing in the hallways in school and disrupting the flow of class. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for that matter, hip hop is like a global phenomenon that doesn't have a name in the 70s. You know, punk rockers were doing it in their whatever neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? It was country kids. They just, it's really just an act of doing things where you're not supposed to be, but
Right.
you want. It's like the kid who walks slow across the street when you're trying to drive. This is his voice. Nobody else wants to hear him, so he's going to be heard no matter by any means. So he's going to walk slowly across the street. Or he's going to ride his bike. He's going to ride his wheelie right next to your car, but not hit your car because he's going to express himself. That's
It's
hip hop.
that energy. It's the
Yeah.
yeah, the energy to that. Yeah, that's very well put. I like
Yeah,
that.
it's
I
an
like
interesting
that.
analogy. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. So you said hip hop is about basically having a message. So I kind of want to segue into 1982, The Message, Grandmaster Flash. It's a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. And hip hop being that, like you said, that expression for people, especially within that time frame, where you kind of you didn't have the funds, so you would use your voice to kind of express how you feel.
Yeah.
But what do you remember about the Grandmaster Flash come up of hip hop?
Um, I remember that was a big track. I remember the record label, which I recently learned was started by a woman,
Mm,
the Sugar Hill
interesting.
Records. And all of those crews, like Fantastic This and Awesome That, and like they were all like, there was like all these groups and duos and trios and whatnot. And I just remember um, my aunt JoJo, Gary, my boy, my cousin Gary lives up here. Shout out to Chef Gary and the whole Williams clan. His mom used to play that track a lot, and it was a powerful track because it addressed you know the government and the influx of drugs into the black community,
Hmm.
or the inability to get jobs, like songs that were talking about this. I mean, black poets were doing that, but it wasn't as large of a scale.
Right,
It
right.
wasn't done to you know people want to knock songs like Rapper's Delight. Like, that wasn't, those guys were just like silly writers, and it really wasn't the first hip hop track, and there's like all this debate and whatnot. That's fine. Like, I'm not here to debate that, or,
Right.
I don't have the facts and like this is that. But I will say this: that track, that track, which was over um, Good Times,
Yep.
yes, it because it was over that, it had such a huge reach
Mm,
because it was palatable. It was palatable um, to so many people because so many people were listening to disco at the
yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now, you got these guys basically emceeing over it, basically rapping over it. They were speaking in that track. They were having a lot more fun than what you heard in a track like The Message, which had a phenomenal beat, but they were they were like the first bomb droppers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were the first of the rock hymns, the first of the PEs, the first of the most defs. Like really, really dropping a message as opposed to like just doing a party track,
Right. Right. Right.
which it was both.
I was gonna say the idea that it was you could dance to it, and the idea of being in the I love the psychology of just being in the room and seeing people maybe like dancing to it and then maybe listening to it really for the first time at the same time.
Yeah,
You're like, yo, actually, wait a second. And
Yeah.
especially people maybe that weren't from the culture, right?
Yeah.
Of the culture. And where would you have to be if you weren't of the culture to even hear that at that time?
Yes, and I think just sitting here talking, I think about George Floyd. I mean, you know, during a pandemic, this guy gets killed. Now everybody's at home and they're watching. I mean, which didn't happen with as as many of the killings that happened before
It's
that. You know
interesting
what I
too.
mean? You know, and a song like "The Message" was kind of that. You know, it was here's this track that is one of the earlier rap songs that is getting out well beyond, this is a Billboard top, whatever. If you look at, I don't know what it made it on the charts, but I'm sure it got up there, which means that somebody besides people that look like who's in his room was listening to it.
For sure. Yeah, and it's very interesting that with a song like The Message, like you said before, they were kind of, I guess, more or less poking the governmental bear, and that's the thing about hip hop as well is, if once a certain amount likes it, listens to it, it almost is inevitable for it to not go to the masses, and that was just then, and talking about now, it's just that's a whole different, the jump on that, people are hitting 1 million views in less than a couple weeks now, compared to back then.
Saying nothing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. but
Straight
but
nonsense.
what I will say is that it's so interesting because back then was a lot of word of mouth, and like you said, your dad with the record, holding a record in the air. Your friends probably went back home and told their parents, and their parents were like, dang, I kind of that other dad was like, I got to get that record,
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. But I want to talk about the 4 pillars of hip hop, which are b-boying, graffiti, DJing, and what's the 4th one? MCing. Yes. So which one? I feel like you spoke on it a little bit about the graffiti, but for you guys in general along the years, what are out of the 4, which kind of like stood out to you guys, the most?
I think for me, I always gravitated towards the music, the DJing and the MCing, because I couldn't dance. Like I was not good on the dance floor. It was never something that I was ever proficient at. And in these, school dances, social gatherings, these kinds of things, I always kind of gravitated towards knowing that I couldn't dance. Let me just observe what the DJ was doing. Let me see what was going on, with the DJ. I was always into the production of things really anyway. And that was kind of like an early. Let me see what are they doing over there?
Right.
What's happening?
Where's the sound coming from?
I was fascinated by that, and then in MCing, even that seemed more accessible as opposed to I didn't have equipment to DJ, but I had a pen and I had a piece of paper and I had this idea in my head and I could rhyme this word with this word and just being fascinated by the way that specifically in rap music how MCs wrote songs and the craft of songwriting was always fascinating to me. And those 2 things I kind of gravitated towards early on as far as the elements. But at the same time, I was always a fan of art and always was a fan of like animation and some of these styles. And it's kind of interesting to, we were talking about, True, you were saying how you were of an age where it was just happening around you,
Right.
And I feel like I, grew up in the 90s where it very much, I was from Oneonta, New York, and a kind of a small town, a college town, right? So there's pockets of it where the artistry is on full display, and then there's other pockets of it where it was like it's nowhere to be found. But I could turn on the TV and hip hop was in the commercials a little bit already.
Right.
MC Hammer was doing, the Addams Family rap. You know what I mean? So it was like hip hop had kind of like has certainly permeated the mainstream in a way that was there and it was present. And by the time it reached me, all of the elements were really already on display in a really like fascinating way.
That's interesting. What about you, True? Out of the 4 pillars, what kind of
Definitely dancing.
dancing?
Almost by itself.
Oh,
Yeah, because I I couldn't rhyme.
Uh,
I couldn't write, and when I mean write, graffiti.
yeah.
And then I couldn't. I mean, I could drop a needle on a record and play one of my mom's old records, but I wasn't DJing. Uh, Maybe a little bit, but not really. But I love to dance because I dance at all the parties that our families threw. And then when I got into high school, I was in middle school. I was in a b-boy crew,
What was the name?
crash crew.
Crash Crew.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I like
yeah.
that. That's dope. That's dope.
And, and I was like a popper. Like I did all like I was,
Hit a
yeah.
hit. Oh,
I wasn't like a ground guy.
oh,
There
okay.
was the cats that was doing the,
Head
but
spins and all that.
yeah, but yeah, they were doing no head spins in the 1990s, and windmills and backspins and stuff like that. I could do a backspin. I think I can still do a backspin. I could do a worm. I could
Worm,
do,
okay.
I could do a worm, forwards and backwards.
Oh,
Still,
oh yeah. Backwards is
yeah,
different.
yeah. It looks cornier.
Backwards
Just like the moonwalk forward look cornier than backwards.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, but
That's a
forward,
good point.
but a forward worm looks dope. Backwards looks weak. Um, yeah, I just love to dance, but I definitely liked listening to music, and I probably partook in a little bit of graffiti,
Yeah.
and I was an art major. So I
Mhm.
drew, I was into computer animation. I'm still an art major.
Yeah.
It's just all of this art.
Yeah. Yeah.
The art of producing a show, the art of making a beat, the art of, blending two tracks. I like to create. I've been a
Yeah.
creative my whole life, and I'm uncomfortable and unhappy if I'm not creating.
Mhm.
And I can't let something just go on and remain the same. I want to create experiences. I want to create journeys. I want to see the world. I want to create a really dope ass passport.
So now when I mention these three items, so it's the three B's, all right? What comes to mind when I say it? Boombox. What comes to mind?
I had one.
That's it?
Radio Raheem.
Okay. All right. There we go. So we get more into it. What about you, Jody?
I think about the batteries, right? I think about never having enough and never having 16 new ones all at the same time. Right?
Was it the D's?
Always some of the
Yeah, depending on your
the
more than likely it
batteries
was a
look
D.
like this cup, right? And a lot of them and right, not all of them were always new at the same time. You always had some four of them
Swapping
at
them
least
out.
that were a little older than the other ones, but man, independence of sound to be able to just have your music go with you wherever you were at was
The boombox on
that
my
was a
shoulder.
concept, man.
And
It's a
guess
concept.
what? And guess what? Now nobody hears anybody's music unless a car's driving by.
Yeah. Yeah. Or
Every-
Bluetooth speaker maybe, but
Yeah, those are few and far between.
yeah, for sure.
Those were everywhere when I was a kid.
Mm.
There was no Walkman. There was no small hide your music from everyone else. Don't know what I'm listening to.
Everybody knew what you was listening to.
Everybody knew what
If
you
you have a boombox, it's a community service to share your music with everybody.
My cousin told me a story. It's my cousin's story. It's my cousin Gordon. He told me a story about how he was on the beach when Summer Madness came out. And everybody had a boombox. And he said he could hear all the way down the beach.
Yeah.
Everybody was playing it, and it was only like 2 radio stations at the time, and it was the hit song. So you'd have to kind of like wait for it to come on, unless you had it recorded or whatever. And he said he heard it down the whole beach. Everybody was quiet, like,
Right. Just knocking, bumping.
yeah.
Oh, that's dope.
Everybody was playing it. You know what I'm saying?
To jump ahead a little bit, a cool connection that I had to the boombox, right? When I started doing college radio and started doing my show at college radio,
Yep.
I had a bit of a built-in audience with the lovely folks that were at this bar that was the Madison Grill in Albany. It was on Madison Ave. And the fantastic bartender at Madison Ave at the time would allow me to, because they still had the touch tunes or like an equivalent of a jukebox that was in there. I don't know if it was touch tunes like they have now, but something similar where, obviously, you just go in there, you play your music. But they would stop the jukebox and put this boombox on the bar and play my show in the bar from, this was Wednesday nights, 12 to 2 a.m. And whoever was in the bar got to listen to my show, which was the People's Show. And I was playing like independent local hip hop music. And we would eventually work it out. You know, whoever had the highest bar tab, you're like, let me know who had the bar tab, and they would win a prize package of some T-shirts and CD out. But it was like that, and it's funny because I never got to see it. Right, I never really got to see the boombox on the bar, but that was always my visual audience when I was doing my show at SUNY. Was the idea that somebody's at this bar now with this boombox in their ear, probably maybe they're too close to it now, but that was that was always a fun piece of connection that I got a little bit later.
Yeah, nah, that's dope. That's dope. That's actually a super dope experience. All right, so the last one, last B, Beastie Boys.
Wait,
I said.
Three
Oh,
Bs.
my fault. You're right.
Okay.
B-boy. That was the second one.
Okay.
B-boy. But we kind of covered that, but that's probably why I skipped over it. But B-boy, nonetheless. Well, when you hear B-boy, what comes to mind?
Beat Street.
B Street.
Yeah, that was a hard flick when I was a kid, and I would watch it as much as I humanly could. Or it was even dope to watch movies that had pieces of b-boy in them. For example, the movie Flashdance. It's about this girl who was an engineer or industrial engineer, not engineer. She worked in like an iron mill in like Pittsburgh, and she wanted to go to a musical conservatory. And there was a scene where she was walking home with her homegirl, and there's these cats just crushing it, and the song is "Just Begun" by the Jimmy Castor Bunch. Dun, 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 dun. Watch me now. Yo, it's like I see it right now. Like I'm looking at it right now. I can see it.
Leotard.
Clean, no leotard. This is like Adidas suits and
Oh, the B-boys. Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah, the girls wore the yeah. There was some leotard and
Was that a thing? The B girls were leotards?
sometimes I think they wore everything. But
Oh, okay.
all right, so check this out.
It's like a meeting of two dance worlds here.
Yeah, in my recollection, I feel like more of the New York City Breakers wore tracksuits, and the West Coast guys and girls, the girls wore like I felt like there was some leotard in there. I felt like the guys dressed like Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay.
I can describe it. I mean, it was like a lot of raccoon tails and
I can see that for them.
Civil War leather, short brim hats, vests with studs, but colored, not black. Like red and yellow and green. They had a unique style, and again, a lot of this is based on the films that I watched growing up. So breaking was all left coast breakdancing, and then Crush Groove and Beat Street and Wild Style were all like New York City, East Coast, like hip hop, even though Wild Style is more.
They were all made by like French and European dudes, right? Right? It was like a shit to me that like random French and European directors that were putting stuff together.
So yeah, so B-boy, yeah, that's
You know what I think about when I think about B-boy? I got this flash of my cousin's bar mitzvah, right?
Let's hear it.
Matt Freed, young, 13 years old from Staten Island. And I'm realizing now at this party that there's levels to the hip hop appreciation and fandom, right? And at this point in time, as far as our lives, this man was way more of an appreciator and aficionado of the culture than I certainly was, and was nice on the floor. You know what I mean? Like, so all the windmill stuff, all the dances moves you're talking about, this guy was crossing his legs, lifting this thing up, he was jumping over his own legs. This was like the introduction to this, to me, not just the introduction, but realizing that I was never going to be as cool as a lot of these cats in the game, right? And that if I was going to figure out how hip hop was going to work for me, I had to figure out a niche for me that was not jumping over my own legs because it wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean?
make this knowledge work for me.
But with that, I remember those parties, right? And it was a very hip hop centric party for
Bar mitzvah,
for
you
a bar
mean.
mitzvah.
Bar
Yeah.
mitzvah.
It was off the chain. It was off the. That was one. Hip hopped out. Hip hop.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So, the last of the three Bs, Beastie Boys.
No, Beastie Boys.
Because I feel like that was like Well, I need to find another B one.
How about Big Daddy Kane?
Okay, so go Big Daddy Kane. I'll tell you why I said Beastie Boys is because for me that was my first experience in um like hearing like white people rap, to be honest. Like that
Okay.
was my first experience with it. And
Yeah.
a lot of people even when I DJ, people are like, "Yo, you got Beastie Boys?" I'm like, "What the I'm already sure." Like and I spin it for them and
Right.
they know every
Yeah.
lyric to it, you
They
know?
had some
So
joints. They had some joints.
yeah, so that was a group that, you know, kind of stood out to me a little bit in
Yeah.
regards to just, you know, cuz hip hop was always like it was black and Latino starting off, you know, and
For
then
real.
enter Beastie Boys, like that was like almost left field, but they were actually spitting. So we're
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
Right, right.
Yeah. And
like
Mike D was nice on the tables. So yeah, Beastie Boys came very late in my life, in my hip hop world life. It was so interesting just watching hip hop and rap evolve as a kid because, as I mentioned, I was there for the breaks and I was there for Rapper's Delight,
Right.
and um, then I moved. I moved upstate, and my mom and dad, they wanted better schools for my sister and I because we were living in the city, and they were like, we just want a better path. Y'all are getting into some nonsense. So they moved us, and I got a crew of friends up there, and I just remember like, you know, the as as the music landscape of hip hop started to grow, you start to see things like um, personalities start to shine through. You
yeah,
start to see the uniquenesses
yeah.
of, for example, you have a person like Slick Rick, who had
Correct.
very, very particular, vivid style. You had Dana Dane. You had these guys that were talking about um, the style of clothing that they wore. You had Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Mm.
You had the Beastie Boys. You would have EPMD, Public Enemy, and everybody, Audio 2 and MC Light. Everybody you had to come with something.
Right, right.
Roxanne
Right.
Shante,
Right.
the real Roxanne, the whole battle between those two. UTFO, who introduced Roxanne by making a song about this woman, and then this woman comes out, and then she's like, boom, and then she becomes part of like this whole mega team, the Juice Crew, just like Master Ace and Marley Marl producing all of their music, MC Shan, and then of course Big Daddy Kane.
Right.
That's Juice Crew right there. So now,
This is from the guy that's not the historian.
I know. I'm letting him go though.
no, but listen,
Because I'm loving it.
but listen, but that's where the Beastie Boys had come in at such a cool time because yeah, they were white, but yes, just like you said, they could spit. They were over some fire beats. And Russell Simmons wasn't gonna let that play. He wasn't gonna let that slide. If these guys were chumps, we wouldn't have heard from them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He put them out when he put out LL. Same producers. You know what I'm saying? You had Run DMC, Beastie Boy. That's what Crush Groove is all about. That film is all about like the forming of this college kid and his homie, and this college kid and his homie basically wanting to start their own record label. You know what I'm saying? Um,
The Def Jam origin story.
the Jeff,
Right?
yeah, but just Mask, whatever. Insert Sheila E, aka shout out to Prince. Saying. But yeah, Beastie Boys. And I wasn't like a big Beastie Boys fan, but something else that's really unique about the Beastie Boys, right,
Yep.
is that they came out when music videos were well underway. Well, like music videos were probably like in their 10th year. Okay. So when the Beastie, maybe 6th year or whatever, but when the Beastie Boys came out, not only, because most of the music videos that were out, most like MTV and VH1 wasn't even around. MTV wasn't trying to play black music. Okay.
So did they break that barrier?
And by the time the Beastie Boys came out, black music was already playing. But the black music that was being played, especially by rappers, was all black.
Okay.
Right? So now you got the Beastie Boys who are white that could rap. And they're rhyming over like crazy guitar, like riffs and stuff like that. And people are going crazy.
Yeah, you gotta play it.
And you said
They were
video.
and they were undeniable. You know what I'm saying? Like even no, it wasn't even No Sleep Till Booking. I know you got a point. It wasn't No Sleep Till Booking. It was you gotta fight for your right to party.
Yeah,
Okay?
you gotta fight.
And that was the joint that everybody knew, no matter what you look like. You know what I'm saying? Even I knew it, and I wasn't even like, me and my my black hip hop friends. We were like, "What is it?"
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
sounds
But-
cool.
But we
Bop
couldn't-
your head
we
to it a
couldn't-
little
yeah,
bit.
we couldn't rap it. I'm sure I've got a license to ill record or cassette somewhere in my collection.
Right, just that. You certainly have the classics and phenomenal albums, but I personally didn't get into them till much later. But that video, that video hit me early, and
Yeah.
the idea of that punk energy that we were talking about,
Yeah.
that was there before hip hop, that was kind of showcased in that, as far as that energy and that youth energy. Like I, as a little kid, fresh off of watching Problem Child, I was all about it. What I'm saying? Like I was like, yeah, bring more of that energy, right?
Yeah, Run DMC did it with Aerosmith.
Right.
Yep.
This way.
All that. Totally.
We're gonna break through this. Yeah,
Yeah, that crossover.
The
Yeah,
energy definitely cut through to me. I always thought Beastie Boys were dope too. That I wasn't really a huge fan of their music and don't really know the discography like that, but they were an undeniable force through many eras of hip hop, and
Correct,
they
correct.
came through and would still come through with saying like Intergalactic is still to me is like undeniable. Like that joint is crazy. I remember getting the album and not loving the album that it came off of, but like their music, there's always something there, right? And I
Yeah.
always enjoy.
How about Sounds from the Way Out? Where they're just playing instruments.
right? Yeah.
They're just playing like
Oh, yeah.
guitar and bass and keys and drums.
Like the music of Paul's Boutique and the composition of that project was something that that's one that I that I would go back to and listen to and be like, yeah, okay, anybody that questions it, like, check this out.
yeah.
I think it's interesting. One of the first records, I know we're talking about records here, that I collected really with the idea of this may be worth something one day. I got a Cookie Puss record, right? The 12-inch single was the old Beastie Boys single, and it was kind of made this time where these guys are at an age now where, and had been for a number of years now, where they're not really crazy about the record. They were not crazy about the energy that they were on at that time, and have certainly pivoted as far as what their message is and their artistic output that they put out now. So the idea of, I saw it at a record store, a crispy copy of it, and just grabbed it really with the idea of like, oh, this might be, I kind of grabbed it selfishly for myself. Like, this might be worth someday because the artist doesn't love this record.
Yeah.
It might be worth something in that. But just as a collector, and it's like, it's cool. It's like pink and blue neon colors. And it's just a dope cover. But that was the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, and so you see why I threw them in the mix? Because I felt like they were so, like, they were infield, but they were like also left field from where everything was, and that kind of just sparked and like you said, the uniqueness of them. They had their own like it factor,
right? And they weren't corny, and they weren't trying to be corny.
Exactly. They were authentically them.
They were like genuine cats. They are genuine cats. Like there were people when the industry, if you will, took off that were generated and there's the Vanilla Ices and the the Hammers or what have like, let me tell you a real quick story.
Yeah.
My sister is older than me, and she used to go to all the clubs. She knew Nice and Smooth. She knew Big Daddy Kane, Scoop Lover, Scrap Lover. She was friends with all of them. She knew Heavy D because she used to go to the club because she was a dope dancer.
Oh yeah.
She used to rock with all
the
them.
way in.
Yep. So, and she used to be in the videos. She was in like 2 different videos. She was in a Nice and Smooth video, and she was in a Big Daddy Kane video.
That's fire.
Now, my sister was actually, because she's older than me, she's 3 years older than me. She was inadvertently my hip hop police. All right, because one day he was like, "Yo, MC Hammer is so dope."
What'd she say?
She was like, "No, he's not."
Cut that shit off.
She was like, "No."
Why?
That's not good. That's not good music.
Uh,
You know what I'm saying? And I never forget that feeling the first time she shut me down.
checking you on your music taste.
As soon as because I did like dope stuff,
Yeah.
you know, partly because I had my own taste. I had my own friends and we had our style and taste. And I had her, you know what I mean? But when I mentioned MC Hammer, like it's like I couldn't even finish the sentence. She cut me right between the two M's.
Did she ever tell you why though?
I got it. Like I
Okay.
understood what she meant. That this guy is not like, why is he good to you? You know what I mean? And her comparison was, it was the sound. It was, you know, like what he's doing is, without her saying it, was a little bit more buffoonery. You know, the lyricism wasn't quite there. Um, it really was a show. You know, it was something else that was getting away from hip hop. Without saying that, that was like her way of saying that. Because when I think about what she listens to, you know, she
In
was
comparison, yep.
yeah, she's a big Janet Jackson fan. She was a big Prince fan, big Michael fan. Um, you know, she liked Tina Marie. She was a fan of artists that, when I think about them now, had incredible musicianship, and her hip hop influence was the same, you know. And even today, like, you know, she's ready to hop on a plane to see when Jamiroquai is going to play next. You know what I'm saying, in London. You know, like that's where my sister's musical taste is. And I'm not going to say it's snobbish, but she's very much into musicianship. You know, not repetitive loops. You know, like arrangements and crescendos, and bright, colorful music, like the way this room is. You know,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
so, yeah, that was the Hammer story.
I'll send a shout out to Alicia Horn, who was my first hip hop censor. This is young black woman on a bus was basically just like, don't listen to that. Listening to what?
What were you
Don't
listening to? Do you remember?
You know what's funny? I was listening to a lot of like rock and roll at the time. I feel like I just moved to the Capital District, and rock radio was everywhere. The Edge, and just like I was into the radio and what was being played on the radio. And I think it was maybe Howard Stern had like the morning show, and I was kind of obsessed with Howard Stern. I had my like tape Walkman and be able to with the FM tuner on it. So I could listen to that, and then would listen to the rock music and a lot of that. Just would listen to that, and but it still already had. Was a fan of hip hop music, and I was really a fan of all music. But this young woman, I'm on a school bus. We're on a school bus, and we're kids, and she was really checking me to be like,
that ain't it.
That ain't it.
She was like, "Well, you need to listen to da 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 da," and she would really kind of catch me up to this. And then, the local Coconuts music store that was around the corner then became the haven for this is like every dollar earned was spent. Really like trying to do Alicia proud with the playlist. It's crazy. I know we're moving on from it a little bit, but I think it's interesting talking about the Beastie Boys. That a piece where, again, not really being a huge fan of their music, but what made me tune into them when I did was other artists co-signing, right? With the idea of like Redman doing a cover of like a Beastie Boys track, or like Dilla when I was into like getting tuned into like the Dilla productions, and not even really being aware of who he was as a producer, but hearing ad libs and samples from Beastie Boys and like Mike D's voice and like these guys' voices on these other tracks. I was like, yo, people, like, the respect was there.
For sure.
And was in there that made me be like, what am I missing? Let me go back and put my ear to some of this stuff, so I can, just for the context alone. Right. That was always where that fit for me. I throw that in there.
It's funny you say that, because if you were to maybe do like a survey says, like Family Feud, and they have like the list. Number one answer in that list, whose voice gets sampled the most?
Right.
James Brown, Biz Markie.
I can see that.
Beastie Boys. I guarantee you, like, they're gonna be, if there's 7 answers, they're gonna be in those 3. James Brown, all
day.
Hey, Biz Markie. Oh boy, like you. So yeah, man.
That's actually very interesting. So I have another question while we're on the topic of Beastie. While we went back to that,
let's run it. Yeah.
So do you guys feel that in hip hop, only one white rapper or group can like exist at a time? Because I feel like there's like the Beastie Boys, then there's like Vanilla Ice, then there's like Eminem, then there's Jack Harlow. You know, like it's always all right. Your turn. Then it's like nah. So what are thoughts on that?
I always felt like for the one that you heard of, and not even just for white rappers, but for all really musician, all art, for the one that you heard of, here's 1,000 that you never heard of that are maybe doing a similar thing. And maybe with the white rapper thing specifically, it's with this one guy that got shine, here's a whole town behind this guy that maybe you haven't heard of, you know, that I think is kind of interesting.
Maybe yeah, I don't know I don't know the story because once you start getting like corporations and businesses and money involved,
Right.
then voids and quotas have to be filled.
Very
You
true.
know,
Yep.
um, there's like Lobo just said, everybody's rhyming. Um, um, Bone Thugs are single-handedly responsible for like a million rappers who have a particular style of rhyming. I said singing first, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Freudian slip of rhyming from Cleveland. You know what I'm saying? And they look like all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Or and you could and if one person comes out of an area, they really are going to be supported by that community. So where, exactly where Kendrick comes from, exactly where Snoop comes from, exactly where the Ghetto Boys come from, exactly where Luke Skywalker comes from, exactly where Outkast comes from. All around that, there's going to be folks that are going to sound like that and are going to support that sound. And it's just a matter of, who's next, if the industry catches on to them, if they're spotted at a show. I mean, I don't know how Eminem was found. I don't know exactly how he was found. I know that I was going to the Spit Kicker shows and the sound bombing shows. Spit Kicker was a show that like Common, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Erykah Badu, De La Soul, Tribe, Slick Rick would.
On one lineup?
Dude, not only were they all on the show, but they all hosted it.
What?
So they would like take turns or whatever. And then off to the side, in another room, there was this white boy with a hood on. He's rhyming, and I don't even know how they heard him because all you could hear was, oh! It was Eminem.
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? Kid.
That's crazy.
Like 17, 18 years old. Like, I saw that. I don't know how this guy got there, but somebody caught him. Somebody saw him, and they were like, you need to come to this. And you need to be in front of these. You need to just be rhyming at this thing so that on the outside chance that Pasta News or Slick Rick hears everybody else going, oh! They're like, they got to stop and be like, yo, hold up. We're trying to have a show here.
Yeah, right.
What the hell's happening over here? And, Dre was the one that scooped them up.
Right.
Interesting, the post kind of Eminem wave of white rappers, right? That kind of came through, and for me, it was discovering this whole pocket that was, after Eminem, but almost really after like 50 Cent. Like 50 Cent came out. I'm in high school, right? And I'm at a suburban high school. Majority of the population of high school is white kids, and the hip hop was bought and distributed, as far as like everybody had bought into this thing at this point. And by the time 50 Cent was, Get Rich or Die Trying, the album rollout was done. Everybody was wearing the
G-Unit tank.
Everything. The G-Unit tanks and the spinning necklaces, and it was
spinning necklace was crazy.
It was a circus. It became a bit of a circus show, from my perspective, that I kind of just gravitated where and even to that point, I had bought into it. Talk about Grandmaster Flash. When you said Grandmaster Flash before in the message, I was like, damn, I wasn't really around for that song, but I remember when Puff Daddy dropped his version. You know what I mean? I remember when that came out, and I remember buying those albums and buying into, and feeling to at the time as a young person, as an insecure person, as somebody looking for identity, that this was a way in to the culture for me, a way into family and a way into community was through this lens of hip hop. And at the time, my only way in was purchasing it, felt like, right?
Right.
And so to be into that, head and tail, to then kind of see, the other side of that, where I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of like a lot of buffoonery happening right here, right now. And I just had to, all I could do was remove myself from it and change my purchasing power, right? Let me look at what other albums are in this record store that I'm not buying, that I'm not, picking up. And then got into the underground independent hip hop music. And lo and behold, there's a lot of white rappers in the underground scene, right? And there's a lot of just people in general in that scene that it's less about okay, we got this label and we have to have the one white rapper, and we have to have the one woman rapper, and we have to have this person that sings. We have to, instead of checking the boxes, it was just art, and it was survival of the fittest, right? Kind of on a different level, but and the context of the music was completely changed. It was less about what Get Rich and Die Trying was about, and more about a different level of survival, but something that felt more relatable to my experience as just a young person, trying to survive, right? But that was still sprinkled when I'm talking about the early rhyme sayers and the Def Jux, and it was these artists that were the LPs and the A$AP Rocks that were, at the time, I didn't even realize they were white rappers, because I wasn't seeing videos. I wasn't even reading liner notes. I just had the internet and these LimeWire and an unlimited supply of here's 1,000 songs that I just downloaded over the last 6 hours, and hearing something I've never heard before, and for the first time, the image of what that was didn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because I was very much a part of that time when I wasn't a DJ. Therefore, I didn't have anybody to play music for. I didn't care who heard this music but me. And I was on a hunt. I wanted Main Flow, and I wanted Mood and Doom albums, and I wanted Living Legends from Kaza and Last Emperor. I wanted this music. I wanted to hear it. And I didn't want it. I didn't care. I feel as a DJ now, often I'm downloading music because I think other people will enjoy it.
Want to hear it, yeah.
And I'm reminded that there was a time when that was not the case for me. When I wasn't spinning, and I just wanted to fill my iPod or my Zune up with the dopest underground no one has ever. I could very easily get If You Think I'm Jiggy by the Locks.
Right.
Anywhere. But there was stuff that I was looking for that was just beneath the surface that I really needed to have, that I didn't even know I needed to have it until I found it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's all a very interesting just point of view. And it's so funny because with me, like I said, so I'm 31. So I'm, and now I DJ as well. So it's me wanting to, dive into the old school and learning the old school, but also keeping up with the new school, and knowing that this all came from somewhere. So the Coil Ray, comes from the Busta, and then, where did that come from? And it's just all funny how everything kind of trickles down and comes from somewhere at the end of the day.
Right.
But another thing I wanted to talk about was the uniqueness of hip hop. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick with the eye patch, LL Cool J with the leg up, and the Kangol hat.
Yeah.
And to moving a little bit forward to Salt and Pepper, Push It, and they were super big with the self-expression and the uniqueness in, you know, like Salt and Pepper was a group, but there was Salt and there was Pepper. It wasn't like let's dress as twins and like, you know, it was always that uniqueness with it was always the individuality in the come on, say it for me.
Individuality?
Yeah, there we go. I couldn't get that word out
okay.
Individuality. But there was always that there was also the group, you know, focused mindset as well. And that was just something that I just, you know, especially going into the 90s era, you know. Everybody, there was a standard of how you could look. You know, everybody had the flat top, but somebody might have it a little slit, a little bit different, you know. And let's talk about the uniqueness.
That's absolutely like where I was living. That's my hip hop right there. That really spoke to me because it became more visible. It became more of it.
Yep.
You were like, oh snap, who's this? Who's this? And then you have friends who like might have heard a song before you heard it. And then you got to go home, and then you got to put WBLS or Kiss FM on. You got to wait for that track and have your pause button ready on your cassette. You know what I mean? So, yo, you didn't hear it yet? Yo, or like getting that phone call. Like I'm gonna fast forward and like when I was in college, and getting a call from my boy Emil and being like, yo, did you hear the new Far Side track? Jay Dilla produced it. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. He's like, yo, wait till you hear this track. It was running. Can't keep running away. And when I heard it, like, that was the feeling that I got. I was like, yo, this is wild. You know, when I was in college, a lot of fly hip hop came out because I went to college in the 90s. Like a lot of really good music was dropping.
Yes.
Gangstar was putting out amazing albums. They had the mighty RSO. Like these guys had Boston like on lock, Edo G and the Bulldogs, and these guys all had great sounds, dope jazz samples, phenomenal break beats. All right, great lyricism, messages. You know, not a lot of fluff. You know, like stuff I really wanted to hear, and the counterparts were happening in New York, like EPMD and A Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers. These guys are talking about, you know, Africa, and I'm like, wow, like, so this is happening in music. Then you got Public Enemy, and you have KRS-One, you know, Boogie Down Productions, and then you have KRS-One, and then like then producers start getting like all of this shine. You know, you start hearing names like Marley Marl, you start hearing names like Pete Rock, you start hearing names like DJ Premier. You know, I think about like going to college with a couple of cats who were from like these brothers who were from the suburbs of like I lived in the suburbs during high school, and there were kids who lived in another suburb like maybe like 45 minutes from where I lived. But when we ended up going away to college, we were attending the same college, and I remember like going over to their dorm, and these guys were playing Above the Law and Ghetto Boys. So they were into, because their fathers were from Texas. And you're like, oh snap! And I'm listening to this, and these guys, I remember Above the Law having like dope production, you know, and then because they were from Texas, they were also listening to NWA. So I'm you know, and then I'm listening to Ice Cube, and I'm watching like Ice Cube and like his trajectory, and then he starts working with like, you know, not Hank Shockley, the Bomb Squad, and he's doing like getting the same production as PE, and then you start to hear like, you know, then you move forward, and because California had a sound.
For sure they did.
Especially, you know, there was a big sound, but then there was a commercial sound, and then there was like, you know, then there was an underground sound. And that's where you get like Souls of Mischief and Far Side, which is considerably later. Actually, not that much later. Far Side was only like maybe like another year or two after. But you get like all of these different sounds from the West Coast the same way you got it from the East Coast. And at the time, I was working at a record store. So I was grabbing joints, man. I was getting stuff like just so I could hear it. And there was no internet. There was no downloading. There wasn't no one track. You had to get the whole record. And sometimes it was one dope track and the rest was a dud. You know what I mean? So to answer your question with a really, really broad stroke, man, for me, and I feel like this conversation is going to be different for everybody because everybody has what I would like to refer to as a golden era of hip hop. All right. There is a time where it hits you the hardest. And after that, it just doesn't. And before that, it just didn't. You know, there was just one sweet spot for everybody. And I know where mine was. And it was easily between, 88 to like 92. That was a really good time.
And it's funny you say that 88 to 92 is because I was born 92, which is
right.
So I personally think the 90s is the best era personally.
Yeah.
I think it's the best era of
deep like JC.
Right.
Like super
It was so much good, like I wouldn't even say conscious music because that's another topic that I'm gonna bring up, but it was such good content, like coming out of the speakers.
Redman was on the radio.
Yes.
When Doja Cat was on the radio.
Yes.
Redman was on the radio.
Yes. And like I said, I have to, as me being born 92, me having to keep up with the 2000s, and now we're in 2023 versus the August 11th, 1973, and really filling that gap and knowing the history, especially as a DJ and, moving forward with it. But I want to take away from your answer in regards of the uniqueness of hip hop and, entering that 90s flat top, era.
What I want to say about the uniqueness is that, there's a fifth element to hip hop. There might be a few other ones, but I feel like the fifth kind of unspoken element of hip hop I don't know if it still is, I'd like to think so, is you kind of had to be cool, right? I feel like that was a big part of it, was the cool factor.
Had to
right?
be you.
and there was that. You could be you, but you had to be cool a little bit, right? And
Okay.
I feel like I don't think I wasn't cool until at least I was 25 years old. And I didn't
Right.
believe it till maybe 10 years later.
Right.
I'm still trying to be cool.
You know what? But the uniqueness of hip hop had me thinking when Busta Rhymes' "Put Your Hands Where My Eyes Can See" video came out, and this kind of imagery that was like, okay, I don't necessarily need to be this look over here, but I could be from outer space. You know what I mean? I could be something that's completely different.
Unique, yeah.
And it can change it every 30 seconds. Like in that video, he was showcased, here's all the different, versions that you could be of one person, right? And that concept really hit me hard and shot across the room for me from the TV of like, what is that? Like, what is going on that TV screen over there as far as uniqueness, right? And you said Salt and Pepper, man. Like, hearing that song on the radio and Push It, right? And like hearing Sex on the radio the first time as a kid, I was like, I never heard that like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They could say that.
And it was on a song where it's like, I remember like even to this day when this song comes out, I get this almost like embarrassed feeling of being a little kid hearing that song,
Right.
In a room without my parents being like, the uniqueness of it, all of those pieces that changed the world, you know what I mean, with its uniqueness. It just fucked people's heads up, and people didn't know what to do with it, you know what I mean, for the most part. And I feel like that part I still look for when we're talking about the new era and the new, just artists of any era, is like, what makes me feel like that kid again? What sticks out and can translate through years and eras, this and third, but it's just that energy that we were speaking about. That's still that punk kid somewhere,
Right.
That needs to be heard and is showing you something that nobody has allowed them to get off before. You know what I mean? I think that's the through line.
Right. So now let's talk about conscious rap and conscious hip hop. So I have on here the date 1989. So Public Enemy, Fight the Power. And them, once again, like we said before, with the message, moving forward, now they're still pushing a button. Flavor Flav's got the clock on his neck, back to the uniqueness. And just speak on that in regards of, your thoughts on, just the Fight the Power and Public Enemy. Also, now you got NWA, F the Police, and, just basically just causing not, I wouldn't even say a riot because media is gonna make it seem as a riot, but more so I guess going against the grain, you know, and
Right.
hip hop constantly going against the grain, and then it also making it mainstream.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if if a million people are rhyming about dancing and partying and singing and making money, which I don't really remember hearing a lot of that as a kid.
Mhm.
Money and cars.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that. I feel like that definitely came later. I don't remember, but just a lot of the songs were about fun, relationships,
Mm-hmm.
macking.
Yeah.
Big Daddy Kane and LL. They rhymed about being dope and being sexy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Um, EPMD rhymed about being dope, relationships. Um, but every now and then you would have some artists like who remember what Grandmaster Flash did,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that that style of rhyming may have been the influence of particular MCs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're
You
saying.
take that and then you combined it with the visibility of what's going on. I'm like, wow, man, we're making records. We got money. We got record deals. We have access. We have access to getting videos. Man, what if we were to rhyme about this? So, or you have a record label that says, hey, there's a lot of rhyming about this. Let's introduce this into. It's like I was talking to my tailor. I have a tailor. His name
Yeah.
is Tony the Tailor.
Shout out to Tony the Taylor.
All right, shout out to Tony the Tailor.
Don't let him see him in sweats though.
Nah, he be all right. He be all right with it. Yo, he's fly.
No, he tailored the sweats too. Don't play.
You gotta hear this though. You gotta hear this metaphor.
I'm
though.
listening.
All right, check it out. I was talking to Tony and I was like, yo, I was in Europe like a couple of weeks ago and I noticed that they're wearing cuffs again. He's like, you know why? Because the style of pants that didn't have cuffs, everybody has those. So they're not moving off the shelves anymore. So now they have to reintroduce cuffs so that there is a new style for people to buy.
Interesting.
And that's what happened with hip hop. You have to introduce something else for people to buy. And if you'll notice, hip hop, conscious rap, only lasted but so long. And then the Jiggy era took over. And
And kind of, the cycle kind of repeated along
yeah,
itself.
but these were all financial moves. You know what I'm saying? Once that became no longer financially viable and people were waking up and um, you know, effing the system and hearing it in music on the radio every day, all day, the industry was like, look, we got to switch this up. I mean, J. Rue the Damage is a perfect example of that, man. Like, he literally went at Puffy for the style of music that Puffy was putting out with his crew. You know, You're Playing Yourself is all about Puffy. The whole song is about Puffy, all right? And for that, J. Rue the Damager was pretty much ostracized and went to Europe and has never come back or looked back, for that matter. But he also never, gave up his integrity. However, Puffy, I mean, all you gotta do is say Puffy. All you gotta say is Diddy. All you gotta say is P. Diddy. Like that guy took all the way off, and he did it by taking absolute chart-topping rock songs, R&B songs, dance songs from the late 70s to the early 80s, filtering them, changing the lead vocalist, adding some 808 snares, and bringing Mary in,
Yep.
and bringing Total in, and bringing Biggie in,
Yep.
and bringing the Locks in,
The Mace, all that, yep.
and Mace in, and created a global phenomenal empire. And once he got out of that, he started getting into other things, vodka, whatever. That's business.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, And I knew stories about him when, I was a beat maker, and I knew how he was moving and hustling and trying to get in this room and that room. And he is a very, very hard worker. Like his clock don't stop, man.
You were talking about the idea of the radio too at that time, right? And at the same time, like Brand Nubian was on the radio, Redman was on the radio. There was a balance too. There's a little bit of something for everybody. If you wanted to hear something, you might learn something, or at least maybe I'll take that back. But the idea that there was something for everybody, and that people that were making intelligent music were getting airplay, and people that were making more ignorant music were also getting airplay, but that balance was there.
Yeah, porridge teachers. Yeah.
I feel like this era kind of gives way to one of my favorite hip hop conspiracy theories, right? That's the idea that around this time there was a meeting, and that between record executives that had all these people in a room, they looked at all the money that hip hop was making. They looked at, okay, we were making this much money from this radio station and this radio station. We also maybe have all of this money invested in for-profit prisons across the country. How do we use this pipeline of music to feed this pipeline of prisons and get the messaging to kind of reflect, if you listen to, this song and we play it 100 times a day, and you listen to this messaging, 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up in a situation where if you follow the song to the letter and let that be your mantra, you're going to end up right where we want you to end up, And at the same time, we started hearing a lot less Brand Nubian and these cats on the radio, and started hearing more of some of the other stuff. So whether or not that meeting actually took place, whether that was an actual, initiative of the people behind the scenes or the people that are kind of spinning these things, I'm not sure. But I know that there's people in the industry that believe that heavily, and people that have talked about it. And it's one of those, things that I feel like if you draw the lines and connect the dots yourself, it's pretty much the writing's on the wall, I think.
I definitely agree, and I could say that a lot of rappers say it, today. They're like, yo, you get paid more money if you talk fuckery on a track, versus being conscious. And on that note, I want to bring up boom bap, because along with conscious rap, I feel like boom bap kind of sits into that space where the it's less going on in the beat, and it's more a need for you to like actually say something, So what are your thoughts on boom bap and boom bap rappers and that boom bap era?
For just what I want to say to it, just to kind of piggyback off the last thought we were talking about, is the idea of if some of that less than conscious than music was maybe more violent or had that violent energy towards it, to me, boom bap and what I was drawn to boom bap was the violence of the drums, right, and the violence, that energy of the aggression of the music of that was just the hardest hitting drums. This guy and a couple other local DJs and legends DJs were playing. We're doing this hip hop celebration, and I was just listening to the drums of this era, and was just like, nothing sounds like that anymore. Nothing will ever sound like that again. And it's just like, whether that was the production, the machinery that was used, the filtering, the production techniques of the large professors, and these, it was just like unbelievable, man.
Yeah, man. The MPC had a sound. The 808 had a sound, and a lot of the DJs were using it, and they were sampling drums. They were sampling jazz drums. They were sampling funk drums. They were chopping them up and replaying them, and adding a little hi hat. The dogs and the cats. Like just making those sounds. And then insert your jazz horn, your piano, your rolling, your keys. And yeah, man, Large Professor, Q-Tip, Premier. Even like, I'm gonna jump all the way forward. Like even Ninth Wonder and Odyssey. Like these guys have had some really, really hard-hitting boom bap. We're talking boom bap in the dictionary, and then you see just one of their songs just written in script as the description. Right. You know what I mean? the hit squad. You know, a lot of what what Public Enemy and what a lot of what Boogie Down Productions was doing. Drums from reggae and whatnot. Um, that that music, to Lobo's point, is really the inner workings of the city. You know, it's the sound of the city. You know, it's a hard sound. The city's hard.
Yeah.
You know, like living in the city during these times in the hood is hard. You know, you're not gonna get that sound from Nebraska. You know, you're not even gonna get that sound from Cali. Cali had a different sound.
For sure.
You know what I mean? It was funky, G funk, and that's and a lot of that has to do with like them being big fans of George Clinton, Parliament, Funkadelic.
That Sunny Beach access also,
Yeah,
right?
there's that. Climate.
Right.
We have 4 seasons. They have like
Two.
two.
1.5.
Right? All of that stuff plays out, man. Poverty's everywhere though.
Yeah.
But
For
it
sure.
hits hard, like if it's real cold.
For
It
sure.
hits real hard.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You standing around freaking fire pit, garbage can, beatboxing, writing rhymes, and trying to figure out where the next meal is coming from, and working that into your lyrics. You know what I'm saying? So
So now I want to talk about you touched a little bit on it, but let's go West Coast. So
Yeah.
Tupac, Dre, Snoop, Ice Cube.
yeah,
I feel like like you said, the West Coast has that different vibe to them.
yeah,
But they also had I wouldn't even say a moment, but they had a time where they were like everybody was focusing on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And it's funny how from the West Coast, or not even the West Coast, but these specific people that I named, Tupac, the Dre, the Snoop, the Ice Cube, how they segued into acting.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you talked about the uniqueness earlier and having like a personality,
Yeah.
and these personalities turned into like characters within Tupac, Juice, Snoop, uncontrollable amount of movies he's been in.
Weed.
Bruh.
You're the spokesman, man.
And Ice Cube as well, and it's funny how these people,
Just son on swagger like every week.
it's crazy. So just at what point did you guys see like hip hop shift into like this other, because you like you said, even Diddy with the vodka, what
Yeah.
at what shift did you see hip hop kind of like make that twist into like, oh, they're not just doing music anymore?
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, man.
I was thinking about all of that was I mean, hearing you say that was made me think about just the obvious connection of Hollywood, right? And
Yeah.
being right there, that these guys were all able to make that pivot,
Right,
with
right.
the art scene right there.
Very true. Yep.
This is crazy to me, but growing up, I think I probably saw Tupac on screen or in a movie before I heard a song and registered that it was like
Tupac.
like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
was
hearing the
right?
voice. Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's kind of a different conversation, but it's kind of connected to. It is a different conversation, but it's connected to the consciousness we were talking about before, right? And in 1992, we might have to do some funky editing with this because I don't know where the story is going to go once I get it started. But in '92, in Oneonta, right? I'm all of 8 years old, and something that happened in Oneonta that is kind of famous or infamous, I should say, was the blacklist, right? There's a situation where there was a white woman had her apartment or her house, her home broken into. She said that it was a young black man that did it. The school administration, I believe it's SUNY at the time, gave the local police a list of every black man that went to the school, that information, and they did a search of everybody's place, right? Out of this scenario, my mother was instrumental in creating the chapter, the local Oneonta chapter of the NAACP, and did a lot of work in the fallout from this situation. I say all of this to say that growing up in my household, I wasn't allowed to really get into what we would consider the ignorant rhythms or anything that was violent or anything that could be considered to uphold any kind of stereotype lo and behold, that I get confused and lumped into that category. So for me, the censorship, we were talking about Alicia Horn, my first censor was my mother, right? In the house.
Which makes
right?
sense, yeah.
And out of that, which is why I brought this Queen Latifah record. And when I think about, Heavy D and the Boys at the time, and Will Smith, stuff that was considered maybe safer, right? That was able to, and just on the first line of defense was just my mother, right?
Yeah.
And she could look at the album cover, look at the back of it, and be like, okay, we'll allow it, and that could be in a house, right? So I miss Snoop. I missed NWA. I missed a lot of that energy because it was filtered from what I was able to get into. And I was at an age where I didn't really have my own agency to really get my own music like that. But when I did, in a record like this was able to kind of slide under the radar, and get to me, on here talking about boom bap. This cut, Evil That Men Do, produced by KRS-One, was probably the first boom bap track I ever heard. And the drums of that were crazy to me and stood out to me. There's songs that I love on this record, but that beat I keep going back to every now and again. You know what I mean? So while I have this record, I guess I don't know if we should talk about this a little bit, but while we're setting the stage for this, right? So this Queen Latifah, All Hail the Queen, right? Is the album, one of this record. And again, even talking about the uniqueness that we were talking about before, changed the way that I listened to music the first time that I heard it, right? So we're getting into song number 2, Mama Gave Birth to the Soul Children, featuring De La Soul, right? Produced by Prince Paul.
Yep.
This song, to me, I was already a kid listening to it, and it sounds like a cartoon. Like, it sounds like a Looney Tunes episode or something. There's all these different elements. There's all these sounds coming out of anywhere. Everybody's voices are crazy. De La has like their voices pitched up like the Chipmunks. There's like so much happening in this song. It's so busy. How it affected me in a way that changed my life, right? At the time, my parents had just separated, right? And I was a young kid going through that, a split household, right? And navigating that, and not even realize I'm navigating it, but I'm navigating it. And one of the things that True and I have in common, listen to this whole thing, us talk, we have so many differences as far as our relationship to hip hop. But the thing that we certainly have in common that I think is instrumental is our pops were music heads, right? And my father was a music head and was into the jazz, was into all of that music, into those eras, and put me onto it. Would play a lot of that music in the household and would play that around. And that was a constant growing up, was music from his record player. A song that's sampled in this song, Mama Gave Birth to the Soul Children, is Otis Redding's Merry Christmas Baby, right? Classic, love the song. And my pops would play that record. He would play that record all the time. He would just be playing Otis Redding all the time, but I love that Christmas record.
Yeah.
And he would play that, and I just recognized it. So the first time that I heard, and now I had the CD for this record at my mother's house. And I'm seeing my father, visitations is like every 2 weeks. Once a week, every 2 weeks, I would get to see this man, right? And I got the CD at my mother's house, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I hear this sample, but I didn't know what the sample was. I had no concept of that.
It sounds familiar.
Is that I was pretty damn sure that this song was in this song. I didn't know who to talk to about it. I didn't.
Right. Yeah, how do I explain this? Right.
I wasn't even sure if I was right.
Right.
So I had this song, and I memorized in my head. I memorized it. To then go back to my dad's house, and 2 weeks later, to then play
it again,
and then be like, oh my god,
and making a connection.
Oh my god, right? It changed.
That's funny.
Foundationally, the way that I listened to music from that moment on, and whether I was a hip hop head through and through, that moment, that year, everything. I wasn't always listening to everything, but I would listen to all types of music and hear it through a lens or through the ears of a hip hop producer. I think, what could you do with this sample? I remember being like really early obsessed with Paul Simon's Call Me Al, and thinking like, I'm gonna do something with that horn section.
Right.
What I mean? Just knowing, had no tools, no artistic know-how, but I just
creative
knew
idea was there.
That this horn, I could do something with this horn, right? And just being obsessed with that. So I brought this record with me because it was a record. It was one of the first CDs that I was able to get. It passed the mom test, right?
Yeah.
And it's a roadmap really to everything else that came after it, and for me, just sonically changed the way that I listen to music since I heard it.
I love that. I love that.
What you said about having the mom filter,
Mm-hmm.
because I was listening to hip hop before it came out. You know what I mean? Like, I heard some of the first rap songs. So by the time I get into an age where there's this huge landscape of rap music, I have already made up my mind what kind I liked. You know what I mean? And there wasn't any negative rap for the first
Couple years.
10 years of my life, or of its existence. So when it started to come out, it didn't sit well with me. It didn't resonate with me. I was listening to dancey, singy, a lot of fun stuff, and I still do. For example, the California rap that I listen to is hyphy. It's Far Side. It's Casual. It's Ahmad. It's Souls of Mischief. Hieroglyphics. Like that's the West Coast music that I'm more akin to. And the same with the hip hop that I choose to listen to, especially in the 90s. I was native tongues all the way. Okay. I was, native, little brother of the native tongues, which is little brother. I am, Common. I'm Most Def. There's stuff, while this stuff is lyrical, it's also very musical. When Black on Both Sides dropped, I thought that was as equal a first album as far as greatness as I felt Nas's first album was. I put those two albums together because Nas's first album, as amazing as it is, I can't take anything away from it. He picked the best producers at the time to produce that record. So it was Pete Rock, it was Molly Mall, it was Q-Tip, it was DJ like he had the best producers, at the time. Everybody who was at the top of their game, I believe Kanye tried to do something very similar with the Dark Twisted Fantasy album. Was it that?
As far as getting everybody in a room, all the players.
He tried to do something very similar, but that was an alchemistic, like it could only be done once. You know what I'm saying? That was lightning in a bottle. All right. And Most Def did something very similar, but he did it with the top underground producers.
This is smart.
So it's like Sean J. Period and Ayatollah, and like he had like, then I think Premier, and I think some of the bigger name guys on there. If I have to look at the thing again, but he did something very similar, and every producer was different. You know what I'm saying? Just a great album, and he was singing and rhyming. Yo, the things he was doing with his voice, he was the instrument. Like he wasn't just rhyming, but he was another instrument on so many of the tracks, and he did it in a way where he understood his range limits, that everything sounded right. And I don't know if he had voice lessons. Like Homeboy Sandman does this very similar thing. Odyssey does a very similar thing. These guys know how far they can go, and they do it just right, and they incorporate it in their hooks, or they might even marry a couple of words together with extending a note or what have you. So what the heck how did we get here? Why?
I mean,
We're doing a journey here, 50
yeah,
years, right?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, but what question were you asked? Oh, you
No, he popped out the record.
Because we were talking about the West Coast, and I derailed that, and then we were doing that. We're jump tracks here.
West Coast.
Pun intended.
West Coast, yes, West Coast.
And then the acting, that was the intertwine and all that.
And then we were also talking about, because you mentioned the filter.
Yes, mom filter. Yes, correct.
G rap fan.
Mhm.
Wasn't a big NWA fan. I wasn't um, I wasn't a big Just Ice fan. Like there were like hardcore rappers, and they just didn't speak to me because that wasn't what I grew up listening to,
Yeah.
nor was that my experience. I did come up from a two-parent house, and I was exposed to a lot of music growing up. I wasn't just exposed to one type of music, which is why I encourage DJs and parents to just, if whatever you can do to make sure that people hear as much music styles and
Experiment.
genres. Yeah, man. Which is what I love that you do, as far as your festivals and the events that you put on. You make sure that there is, the tiniest little corner of music from, you will get that guitarist from Schuylerville.
Correct.
You know,
sure, for
huh?
sure.
There is one there?
Yep.
Oh, yes. And he raps.
Yep.
And somehow you find them and you bring them in and you put them next to, Ozymandias, and you put that guy next to a trap rap.
Yep.
And all of a sudden there's a huge music festival, not a particular genre or thing, not a rap show. You know what I'm saying?
That's funny. On that note, we got something in the works. We got an open mic dropping real soon. Shout outs to Aura, Emac and Bolio. We got an open mic coming soon, so we gonna plug that in real quick.
That's my spot.
Hold
Hold on, we got a break.
That's my
I'm
assistant.
gonna give you this just to tuck that back, just for the visual continuity.
But while we're there, I also want to talk about the ladies in hip hop. So the MC Lights, the Queen Latifahs. Give me some more. Give me some more.
Yo, Jean Grey,
Mm.
right?
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's such a male-dominated industry, and when the females come in and they're dope, you like, nah.
Goodness.
Oh my.
I mean, clearly, obviously, with this album, I talked about Queen Latifah, this being a foundational album for me. It never really occurred to me with that as my foundation that it was odd that women were rapping, or not that it is odd, but that was like a thing,
Not a norm.
That wasn't
Yeah,
the
yeah,
norm,
yeah.
right? I always was looking for that, and was always and from Eve to
Yep, Eve.
there was a time where there was like kind of like the white rapper thing, but it was like if you were every group had the front the lady, the first lady, right?
First lady,
that was out. Mia X to every crew had Rod Digga, it was like. And
Remy Ma, yeah, right.
It's all so dope that I was like, why isn't there more of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like for me, when I had the opportunity to be a DJ and to host and to showcase artists, it was really important to me that if they were out there and I was able to, I was going to showcase women rapping, and especially in the Capital District, and like that was
Shout out to Ronnie O.
that was
Facts,
oh my God. Yo, I just saw her perform over this past weekend, and it was just, they're talking about that like little kid energy again. I'm just being like in awe, like she's got it. She's so dope to listen to, and just hearing, I think a lot of people, gravitate, especially in hip hop. Like you said, everybody's top 10 list is going to be different. Everybody's experience is different, and a lot of people go for what speaks to their experience, I think, a little bit. There's so many incredibly talented people in the world that you're gonna miss if you only go to what you're familiar with.
Right.
And
100%.
Artists like Amani, artists like Rhapsody, Jean Grey, are just like phenomenal on and go without saying, hey, these are women that rap. They're just like, these are artists you should know about, through and through, right? And that there's there's an underdog status to that for some of these cats, where it's like, all right, championing that cause. But even that now, I wish it kills me that I'm not a DJ in this era now, where there's so many phenomenal women that are doing it, and like the City Girls, and like this current era now of women rapping their asses off and really getting a spotlight in this way that, like,
Sims.
man, there's so and for in every pocket, whether you like independent, you like mainstream, you like this conscious thing,
They're
you
there.
like
Yeah,
bounce,
they're
you
there.
like this sound Houston stuff, like there's women and they're loud and they're in the forefront and they're crushing shit. You know what I mean? And it's to say that they haven't always been here would be a gross understatement, you know?
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
For sure.
You got any thoughts? Fair enough.
I heard a lot growing up, and we we loved the Roxanne records when we were kids.
Mm.
They were just fun, because it was this whole thing of, these four guys talking about this girl and how they all dug her, and then all of a sudden, there's a there's a retaliation song that comes out by Roxanne. That's by this girl Roxanne. From my understanding, she was somebody whom they found, and they wrote her lyrics. And then Roxanne Shante called herself the real Shante. Excuse me, called herself the real Roxanne. In any event, I forget how it goes, but Roxanne Shante, yeah, she was the one. And she's the one still to this day. Like, she's no joke. But then you get people like Bahamadia, because you got the legendary Roots crew, right? Who definitely like came out of nowhere, and everybody was getting beats from beat makers, and these guys were a band, and there were other bands. You had Freestyle Fellowship, but you didn't have anything like the Roots. And then when these cats came out, I know we're talking about the ladies, but I'm going there. These guys come out and they're just mind blowing. Like Black Thought's lyricism, Rozelle, the godfather of noise, and his beatboxing, the instrumentation, the arrangements of them songs being put together by Questlove, Hub on the bass, and then these guys are producing, and they're holding up people like Bahamadia. This whole movement that comes out of Philly, and Philly is just such a musical place anyway. From Sounds of Philadelphia, Mother, Father, Sister, Brother, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, and Daryl Hall and John Oates. You got really fly music coming. There's Jazzy Jeff. I mean, come on, favorite DJ. So, yeah, man, it's just there's a lot of phenomenal female MCs, and the music itself is made by a lot of people who look like a lot of different things, and some of them have something to say and some of them don't.
Next deep dive I got to do, and that we should all do, is women producers. Because I was trying to think in my head of like even 5 that I could name, right? Like that. Right. And I'm struggling right now. I'm thinking of Missy. I'm thinking Georgia Ann Muldrow. I'm thinking, everybody loves.
That's a tough one.
Toby Nagway, right?
Oh yeah.
But when he first came out, what drew me to his music was the woman he had mashing the MPC in the background with the afro. That was like, yo, what are these beats? Like, and I feel like she's not really in that. I don't know that she's doing so much of the production anymore, but like just trying to find more of that and champion more of that, man, because it's like it's out there and it's a different. The women have been,
I actually
they put up with a lot in hip hop for all of this. So the stories that they had to tell and the rhythms that they had to share, we got to tune in, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a really good point, man, because I think one of the reasons why, we didn't hear as much throughout the 50 years is because it is a male-dominated industry.
Without a doubt.
And even when it wasn't, women have always had to hold things together. They had to be at home, or because, hip hop comes from an inner city community. So 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a situation where the woman is taking care of the family.
Yeah, for sure.
Not on some indigenous people while the guys are out hunting, but a lot of men left.
These are the memes now where it's like the woman's at home and the men are out working on their mixtape, right?
Studio.
So, you know, I'm sure there's a combination of reasons why, you know, we don't hear about as many women MCs as we hear about guys. And also, when you're talking about the coolness of, coolness being an element of hip hop, you know, I also think about um, the joy, you know, and that coolness can be joy. And the joyness of having the ability to be able to express yourself and be heard when nobody's trying to hear you. You know, like I'm gonna do this no matter what.
Right, right,
You
right,
know what I
right.
mean? Um, and then also, is this an element that is assumed is a part of hip hop, which is the producer or production?
I think that
Is that just assumed?
that, and this is an interesting conversation, right? Has the element of turntablism evolved into or maybe splintered off, because turntablism is going to be its own art
Yeah,
form, and it's
it's
going to
just
be its
so
own
yeah.
thing. And the DJ role is certainly different than the production role, but as far as the who's putting the music down, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
because the turntablism, to your point, the turntablism is the DJ because the DJ had to create the break, and that only
Who's
happens.
controlling these drums at
That
the end of
only
the day?
happens you know, that only happens from turntablism. Otherwise, you play the instrumental on the other side of a disco single, and the you know such and such just raps. But these guys were like literally making breaks of two of the same songs and only taking a piece of it while such and such is rhyming. But now you have these beats,
Yeah.
you know, some 4 or 5 years later, like really like layered out, fleshed out beats that are beyond just bringing a couple of records back and using a fader. So
Yeah.
That is an interesting
If not
question.
if not a separate element, certainly examples of just the language of hip hop expanding and the art form just like exploding in ways that people, like, we're still trying to wrap our heads around, and we're still writing books about the techniques of and all of that. You know, it's
Let's talk about the other records you guys brought through.
okay, um,
Let's start with Sandman first, no?
Sandy, let's go.
right.
I feel
Okay.
like you brought
I
Sandman, but you
did.
got a relation to Sandman.
We do.
Okay,
We
but
do.
okay.
So I did. I brought Homeboy Sandman's "Don't Feed the Monster" record. Now this, I don't know how many albums in at this point. If you're not familiar with Sandman, Homeboy Sandman, um, dope MC, independent, phenomenal writer, wordsmith, what have you.
Friend.
Uh, I've been able to become friends with this guy, and I feel like he's somebody to me that I got to meet at, I guess, at the maybe the a very, seems like an early stage in his career, an early stage in my career in media, and somebody that I can just kind of use as a compass, or as a north star sometimes, to be like, yo, this is somebody that's doing the art unapologetically 100% to their best ability, and to the ability of like rebuking every piece of resistance around them, right? And I've just wildly inspired by this person. And Yeah, dope album. So now, why I brought this record though
Just hear it.
was because it was this opportunity, right? And we didn't really get to talk about how you and me met and our relationship so much at this point, but it was an opportunity where, um, at this point in our relationship, I had kind of taken a step back, right? I got a couple of kids now. I'm battling depression and just the life or whatever, right? But I'm going through my shit, right? And luckily I have good friends that invite me out to things and still do things. And there's this evening where I'm hanging out with this guy, and we're putting together he's building a haunted house right in Troy somewhere. We're putting together
The infamous.
building all of these things, and we're literally just like nailing things into walls, and we're just like hanging out. And through the course of just natural conversation and small talk that comes up when you're hammering and nailing, haunted houses to walls and things, right? The opportunity came up to, you are and were at the time, Homeboy Sandman's tour DJ. And he was, he just kind of came off the tour, maybe for this particular record or the record before it. And you were just in conversation about, setting up this tour and getting from point A to point B, and the logistics of moving as an artist, right? Now, this is also kind of peak COVID, right? We were like, shit is shut down. Shows aren't happening. Maybe I feel like you guys had a European tour plan that either happened or didn't happen, was about to happen, but it was around this time period.
Yeah, we had one cancel.
Long story short, with the details of that, there was an opportunity for Homeboy Sandman had an opportunity to film a music video in Asheville, North Carolina, and he was going to rely on the assistance of this guy to drive him there, right, to bring him from point A to point B. And it happened that you had something going on. You were busy, you booked, you had something going on. It turned out in the height of my depression, and my life was wide open, right? I had no plans, no planners, no Rolodex was empty. I was wide open with my schedule. And up to that point had really been saying no to everything. Opportunities to kind of do a thing, shake off, the dust and kind of get back out there in the world a little bit. I was like, nah, not into it. But for some reason, not for some reason, I just love this dude, man. And the opportunity to just kind of like hang out and do whatever. He kind of threw the ball to me, was just like, hey, Lobo could drive him. And I was like, could I drive him? And it was like, and before I had even said yes to it, I had mentally said yes. With both feet jumped into it, and I was able to just do this trip. Now, what I didn't realize was just kind of doing a chaperoning, a chauffeuring of artists from point A to point B would then turn into the treatment for this music video was we're climbing the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I guess spoiler alert for the people that are watching it, but what I'll say is the shortest version of this possible is that it was a life-changing trip in the middle of the pandemic that we got in a car and drove from New York to North Carolina straight, 14 hours straight down. What? And, crashed our big New York asses on the couches of the film director and these folks here and just like did it, did the damn thing and recorded this music video. And if you watch the video, I like to say that I had a hand in it because I have a literal arm in the video where I got to like hold a lighter and light a dollar bill on fire or something. But the experience of recording it and the physical excursion to get to the place where we recorded it was a life-changing and kind of life-affirming event for me that I kind of came back to New York with this really almost super refreshed and like ready to take life back on a little bit,
I love that. That's dope.
And kind of jump into it. And since then was able to kind of get back into, media stuff and kind of talking on microphones again and manipulating sound files. And it kind of brought me back to a little bit closer, at least, to where my brain needs me to be, in this media field here. So that's why.
Shout out to Sandman, man. Shout outs to Sandman. Oh, we at this angle. Shout outs to Sandman.
That's right. Check out Stress on Homeboy Sandman.
Hold it up so they can see it.
Don't Be the Monster. Track 3.
Produced by
Track
Chris.
3.
Whole album produced by Quelle Chris, who's another phenomenal person to listen to, and another great artist during the pandemic, listening to music and having music be the medicine was that was a big time for me to kind of be receiving energy, and music hit me hard that year. So I like to think that hip hop brought me back to life with that one.
So that's the same, man.
Peace.
What you got over here, True?
All right. So I'm gonna start with this Dr. Bongo.
I love the cover art.
Yeah, he's a European producer, and he makes these really great compilations. And this Dr. Bongo, I have 5 albums, 5 compilations by Dr. Bongo. This is volume 1. I have 6. I have 1 through 6. These songs are from Africa, different parts of Africa. They're Senegalese, music from the Congo, a lot of Brazilian music, a lot of samba and bossa nova, funk, disco, and this is a lot of the music that I'm listening to now. This is what's playing in the car, and I DJ mostly MP3s because I play music off of my computer,
Right.
which I'm sure you're familiar with.
I
Right.
am very familiar.
However, about 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the year, I do vinyl events. And I was doing a vinyl event with a buddy of mine down in Hudson, Effie Asili. He does this party called Botanica, Vinyl Healing. And at the time, so I did the July one. And I knew that he does them the first Saturday of the month, and I knew that I had that Saturday off. So I reached out to him, maybe in the winter, maybe in March or something. I was like, yo, I got the 1st of July, the first Saturday in July off. Boom. Can we do that? He's like, lock it in. And sometime between that time, I was on Spotify and I'm driving, come across Dr. Bongo, and I'm listening. I heard one song, and I was like, who is this guy?
Right.
And I look him up, and I realize he's a DJ that digs, and then he makes compilations. So I'm like, yo. So I start listening to the compilations, and every song's a gem. Like psychedelic soul and jazz, like
Oh, wow.
Mad Lib samples in there. I'm just like, yo, I sent this song to PJ Katz. I sent this song to Moses Rockwell. I said, I'm like, yo, the people who I know would appreciate
Right.
like joints on here, including myself. So naturally, I went online and I just started looking for the records. And this is what I've been listening to lately for me. All right, so this has been healing me, right?
I like that. I love that for you.
Segue,
Yep.
Plantasia. This was a gift that was recently purchased for me.
Vinyl healing. Talk about it.
This is vinyl healing, but this is music for plants.
Oh.
So you drop
good
this,
look at it.
and this
Your plants start growing or something?
well, it just changes the energy in the room. They respond, they react. Yeah. What I haven't gotten into yet is I have sensors that I can actually put on the plants.
And
So
air
when I put,
play music and stuff like that?
so when I play them, when I play music or when I water them, sounds will emit.
Similar to the Soul Fest or something like that, right?
I'm very surprised that you brought this back.
Very
I love it. I love it. I love that.
I've
that's
never
what's
heard of
working
that.
with you right now. Yeah. Sure.
So and there's a correlation between what's happening here and here,
Let's hear it.
which is this music is really making me feel good right now, and this music is making my plants feel good,
plants, yeah.
and my plants make me feel good.
So I see that's full circle.
Especially when I see them and I see them growing. Like I've been changing soil. I've been clipping dead ends, and I've been buying soil enhancers, and I've been using soil food for the water. Recently bought a new kettle, a new water jug for sprinkling the leaves. I recently bought a spray brush.
Mister or something
Mister,
like that?
yeah, thank you. For the plants. Got a couple of new pots because I've noticed that some of my plants have outgrown their pots. So I've cut them out of the pots that they're in, added some new.
Interesting.
So this has all been going on probably for like the past month or two, just a revitalization of my relationship with my plants. And I think everybody's doing pretty well. I'm really checking on that.
Plantasia. I love that. Hold that up so that they can
So shout out to Jasper
Plantasia.
Gittes for this wonderful birthday gift.
That's a gem. And you know what's funny? So when I was on my trip to Asheville, in Asheville, North Carolina, is I don't know if it's but is a Moog Museum in Asheville. And at the Moog Museum, they were very much triumphing and championing the Mort Garsons and this particular album, right? And coupled with the idea of being out there in Asheville, every store, regardless of what you're buying at the store, also sells houseplants. So I came back from North Carolina not only with this renewed energy of self, but with a couple of houseplants. And it started my, through the pandemic, my healing journey was also kind of tied to plants. And kind of interestingly enough was this idea of the first kind of media project that I was trying to get into was DJing for houseplants, right? Everybody was on Zoom. Everybody had the Zoom thing going. I had this idea of like, all right, let me put a playlist together for people's plants.
Oh, cool.
You could tune in, just don't you tune in, but put your plant in front of the camera and have the plant tune in. And let me DJ
Catch
for
these
like a room
frequencies.
for of plants here,
Yeah. That's dope.
This was, and then I got back to different directions, but I have a playlist. I have an 18-hour playlist of plant music that's big on Mort Garson. That's big on, and I don't know if you've done the knowledge on this, but what I've read about it was what's working for plants for this is the frequencies, right?
Yeah.
The frequencies that the instruments and the electronics are playing at mimics pollinators, like the wings of a hummingbird or a bee or something like
You
that.
can hear it. You can hear it when you play it.
That's
Because I listen to
Wait,
it.
so it doesn't play out loud?
No, it does. Oh,
It
it does.
does.
It certainly does.
This
But
is
the
music.
vibrations of it, right?
Okay,
The
okay. I was about to say, I
frequency,
was
yeah.
like,
But this is an arrangement.
uh,
These are specifically to.
I'm about to YouTube that when I get home.
You can listen to this stuff on Spotify.
That's crazy.
Picture now, I mean, and this could segue to a future experiment. Now that marijuana is legal in different capacities here in New York State, I want to do an experiment that's like we got a plant growing in one closet, plant growing in another closet. We're gonna play Brand Nubian and only the conscious rhythms for this one here, and then we're gonna do another one that this is the Onyx booth on this side over here, and see which one grows which way into which potential here, right?
You know what's so funny about this? This is me being transparent. So in my studio, right? Sometimes I used to smoke a lot. I don't smoke anymore. Sometimes, but so I would smoke, right? And I had like a lily plant in my studio, and I would like play music and like just get a whole bunch of stuff done within this time. And it's funny because like every now and then I would like blow some smoke at the plant.
Yeah.
And just like not think anything of it, just like jokingly like. So one day, so it's typically like just green leaves. So one day, actual lily spouts out. So I say to the person that I got the plant from, because funny enough, backstory, she forgot the plant mid interview, like an interview like this. She brings the plant to like talk about the plant, forgets the plant. She was like, honestly, she's like, you can have it. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. You can just give me this big plant,
I got a plant.
bruh. I text her, hey, there's a lily actually popped out. She's like, a lily has never popped out since I've had the plant.
Right.
And I was like, is it the music? Is it the weed? Like, I was like,
You gave it that energy. That's right.
bro,
That's right.
so
It's the thing.
so crazy.
That's the thing.
This actually looks like a Chinese evergreen right here, and I've got one, and it is doing really, really well. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I don't know, because I'm getting old.
Well, and you guys as being DJs, I feel like the opening song on this record, for those that are familiar with and that have heard it, is a great track to EQ your room sound with. Like if you're setting up,
Plantasia?
this album, I'm telling you, the first record on this Plantasia track, play that track. Next time you're setting up a room and you want to check out your spatial, because the
That's so
way that the
interesting.
track is layered, it's sonic bliss. You will grow. You don't have to be a
That is
plant.
so
You will
interesting.
grow as a person listening to this album. It's great. It's good. It's a good one. I'm so happy you brought that record, man. That's
All right,
crazy.
so one of my last questions I got for you guys, man. In the evolution of hip hop, the evolution of music, however you want to position it, man. How do you guys feel about AI music? What are thoughts on that? So, for example, artificial intelligence. So, but it's like, let me make it make sense. So, like Spotify, right? Spotify has like a AI DJ who, depending on your first song you pick, it will like integrate and be like, oh, let's play this song next, and let's bring the beat in here, and basically trying to simulate DJs or just in general. But there's so much different aspects to AI. Like I put Phantom onto AI production and producing, and you can literally type in something and it will pop out like stems of what it thinks the sound you're trying to go for. So
I don't know enough. I don't know enough about it. to
fair
speak
enough.
on it.
Fair enough.
I'm interested in the tool of it, right? And it being used as a tool. And for every new piece of technology that comes out, there's people that are afraid of it. There's people that immediately jump to it to be able to use it and benefit from the use of it. And then there's people that are going to exploit it and make $1 million off of it. And then everybody going to kind of run to that. There's also going to be, for as many people that are upset about, oh, this is taking away the jobs from this person, or now this AI thing is doing the job of 10 DJs, yes, but it's also going to make the DJs that DJ work that much harder and hone their craft that much harder. And the next person that wants to be, beat the robot, work that much harder, right? So I think it kind of like brings everybody's skill set up. And for those that aren't maybe as proficient, it gives them a leg up to use this tool, to here's a bit of a cheat code literally to kind of get to, your next stage. And then when you get to that next stage, I think about Swiss Beats and that what's the
Casio?
that Casio joint, right?
Yeah.
With that drag on song and just like until we're now in a position as the audience and the outsiders looking in where we can listen to, a song and be like, "Oh, you know what? I know exactly how they did this and this and this
Right,
because
right, right.
that person then took the time to give us the tools, right? And show us the blueprint for it. Um the majority of people, unless you tell them or show them that this was the AI thing, are not going to know that.
Right.
And I think that that's fine. I don't see that being a bad thing. I think that it's still not, AI is not going to sell your product for you. I don't think it's not, there's still going to be so much work as an artist that any person's going to have to do to get
to
their
put
art
in,
out
yeah.
out to the world that, use AI. If it saves you 5 hours,
Right,
doing,
right.
this one part of the craft so that you could do all this other stuff or do this other element greater, grander, with more love and art put into it, you jump on it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
say.
I see using it as a like I guess a time saver more or less is where I see the benefits of it. Using it as a cheat code, I feel like that's a little bit different, but you can consider it whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's all very interesting and it's all just continuously developing. So I said developing, but developing.
I
So
think
it's also interesting.
I see it kind of akin to like there was a wave of we were talking about producers, right? And the wave of the producers that you used to love that would first they would maybe put out beat tapes, right? And then they would maybe put out first they would put out maybe instrumental versions of the songs you love. Then they
Yep.
would put out just soul beat tapes. Now a lot of producers are putting out their beat kits. Now
Yep, yep,
here's
yep.
all the sounds that I use to make all of these things, right? And now you can go out and make this Alchemist type beat with all the Alchemist tools or whatever, right?
Right.
I see AI being able to give somebody that same ability, right? To, Kanye West is still going to use, Frank Duke's, song palette. And, he's going to go through this whole palette of sounds and colors. And from that, we're going to extract this one, 3 seconds that really, that then brings this larger song into, where it needs to be.
Right.
I think the artists are still going to be artists and they're still going to have that ability
agree.
to
I
again
agree.
to use that, use the AI as a tool and to use the, I say a cheat code, but I think it's certain people being able to kind of figure out, time management skills better.
Yeah, loopholes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to say, man, I appreciate you fellas coming through, man, wholeheartedly. It's been a dope, super, super, super dope conversation. We talked about this a long time ago, and I want to make sure that I executed on it. We got to do a part 2 for sure, and how you guys met, and
Yeah.
we could just talk a whole nother.
Because that's what we were talking about actually at that time.
No,
So,
for sure, for sure.
calm down.
Yeah, so yeah, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it, and yeah, like I said, we got to do this again. Shout out to Blake Annex once again for
Blake
having us here today. Check out their podcast room check out their Instagram, the Blake Annex. Where can the people tap in with you guys and stay tuned with you?
DJ Trumastr at DJ TRUMASTR. Instagram is my primary place of marketing and promoting. And or you can just hit me up, give me a shout, send me a message.
He's around.
Catch me at a show. I like to do a lot of them. If you need me to DJ your wedding, I'll do that too.
True.
Say I true. SAYITRU. Say I true instead of say I do.
Right.
And other than that, I'm around. Yeah, I'm accessible. I'm all over the world, but Capital District's my home.
Yeah. And I'm also similarly around, right? I don't got much to sell. Too many websites that they're out there. You catch me on Instagram at Daylit Dad. If you want to get a hold of me on some media capacity, you can find me at send me an email, jcowan@wamc.org.
Appreciate that, man. And you already know it's your boy DJ Hollywood. Find me on Instagram, DJ HOLLYW, the number 8D. All right. And wait. Before we get out of here, hold on. We cannot not talk about Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Come on, just give me the, please.
Well, listen, Can't Stop, Won't Stop is a 50-year hip hop exhibition that is going on at the Albany Center Gallery curated by Robert Cooper, Boogie Rez, which is a duo crew, and myself. Just go. There's about a week and a half left for the exhibit to be up. So if you haven't had a chance, wait a minute. When is this podcast airing?
Tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. It's gonna drop soon.
It better.
Because it's time sensitive. It's gonna drop. It's gonna drop before.
So then, real quick, if you didn't get a chance to check it out, it is an exhibit that's going on until the end of August, and it's a great exhibit. It's there's beautiful art, there's paintings, there's interactives, there's a subway car that you can actually sit in. So and we had a grand opening on August 4th. There was live music and DJ Hollywood taking dope videos. And
Yes, sir.
yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, y'all crushed it, man. Shout out to everybody
Pull up.
that was involved in that event, and
check that out.
and the audience as well, because I feel like I keep seeing now, posts about all the artwork that sold, and just people that came through, saw it, loved it, and brought a piece home with them. It's just like that's what we've always been in it for.
Thanks for all the local newspapers. Thanks for all of the Rolling Stone magazines that shouted us out. But most importantly, thanks for the audience for coming, supporting, and shouting us out, and continuing supporting it.
Packed house in there.
Yeah, over 400.
Jumping.
That's dope, man. Congrats. All right, man. So once again, Albany Art Gallery.
Albany Center Gallery.
Albany Center
HBG.
Gallery. I stand corrected. Albany Center
corrected.
Gallery.
You sit corrected.
I'm like, when I post it, I'm gonna be standing corrected.
True.
He's got all the puns right now. All right, let's get these guys out of here, man. Once again, it's your boy DJ Hollywood, and this is Off the Record.
Peace.
Happy birthday, hip hop.
You are now tuned in to Off the Record. Off the Record. Off the Record. Off the Record.
Off the record.